start by expressing my condolences to Len's wife, Linda, and his children, Len Jr. and Lisa. My family's thoughts and prayers are with his family during this very challenging time. The Chiefs and the city of Kansas City have truly lost an icon. Len Dawson has been associated with the Chiefs organization for 60 years, and his impact, both on and off the field, will be remembered by generations of pro football fans. Len was my first sports hero, and he remained somebody I admired and respected his entire life. His impact on the Kansas City Chiefs and everyone who has ever worked for the organization cannot be overstated. With that, I'm happy to open it up to questions.
Let's go first to Adam Teicher. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Clark. Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about Lenny. It's a sad day for sure. Can you share what plans the team has in terms of honoring Lenny, whether it's tomorrow night or later on in the season or some other thing that the team might have planned?
Yeah, so we're in discussions right now with the family on that. We want to be respectful of what the family would like to do. Certainly, we'll do some things during the game tomorrow night, and then hopefully something later on at GEHA Field at Arrowhead that would be open to the fans.
Let's go next to Vahe Gregorian. Go ahead, Vahe.
Hi, thanks, Clark. Appreciate you being with us, and sorry for your loss. You mentioned Len being your first sports hero, and I wonder what made him that, and I also wonder if that stayed with you kind of all your life, all his life, that feeling of the way you first saw him.
Yeah, it sure did. I think it was, to a large degree, a coincidence of, my age and when Len was having so much success on the field for the Chiefs. He was really synonymous with those early Texans and Chiefs teams that won 3 AFL championships and Super Bowl 4. And so it was pretty easy for a 6 or 7-year-old kid to look up to Len and say, hey, that's one of my heroes. And you're exactly right. That feeling really stayed with me my entire life. And I think back to 10 or 11 years ago, shortly after I'd taken over leadership of the Chiefs, sitting down and doing an interview with him, and just how surreal that was. I was doing an interview about my leadership of the Chiefs with somebody who I literally idolized as a kid. So it did stay with me, and I think that was true of really everybody who came to work for the Chiefs. I remember Scott Pioli telling me he had a very similar experience when he did his first interview with Len, and just how awestruck he was to be doing an interview with a Pro Football Hall of Famer and somebody who had accomplished so much off the field as well as on.
Let's go next to Len Jennings. Go ahead, Len.
Hey, Clark, thanks for taking the time to talk about Len. And just a question, if you could reflect, or what do you remember most about the relationship that Len had with your dad, and with Hank Stram?
Yeah, well, there were a lot of things that were unique about the relationships that group of men had because of the battle that they had been through with the NFL, when the two leagues were battling against each other, and literally the survival of the AFL was not certain. And I think that gave that group a very special bond. And of course, Len and Hank and the Chiefs were a key to the AFL succeeding. The success they had on the field, even though they didn't win Super Bowl I, I think they showed that they had the capacity to come back, which they did 3 years later, and win the Super Bowl. So, my dad, Hank and Len were very close. Len was obviously the leader of the team, with Hank the leader of the football team as the head coach. And so the three of them really had a special relationship.
Let's go next to Sam McDowell. Go ahead, Sam.
Hey, Clark. What was your relationship like with him when you were a kid? And can you sort of describe for people just the magnitude of impact he had on this city? I mean, we see it with Patrick certainly today. I'm wondering if you can kind of give us some insight into the impact that Len had when you were a kid.
Well, I think Len was really the first big sports celebrity in Kansas City. And he certainly is up there in the top, 2 or 3 or 4 to ever have played for teams in Kansas City. And I think really anybody who grew up during that era grew up cheering for Len Dawson. He was the undisputed leader of the Chiefs team that went to the Super Bowl and eventually won the Super Bowl. So I think not only me, but anybody who was cheering for the team during that era has a very fond memory and a very special bond with him. The thing, of course, that makes Len so unique is his career didn't stop when his playing days were done in 1975. He went on to this amazing broadcast career, both TV and radio. And through that, he stayed attached to the Chiefs and also the city of Kansas City. So that gave, future generations that weren't necessarily alive when he was winning Super Bowls, but it gave them a connection with Len Dawson and the Chiefs that, I think makes him truly special in the pantheon of great players to have ever played for the Chiefs or frankly, any Kansas City team.
Looks like we have 4 more. We'll go right down the line, starting with Todd Palmer. Go ahead, Todd.
Hey, Clark, my condolences. I appreciate your time. I was curious, do you have any specific memory? You mentioned him being a hero when you were a kid. Do you have any specific memories that kind of jump out from those days? And similarly, do you have any specific memories from as he, was older and you took over the team and he was, still doing play-by-play?
Yeah, well, as a child, I just remember being on the Chiefs field and looking up to Len. Of course, as a child, all the players were huge, and he was actually one of the smaller one of the group. But he was the one that had the it factor. He was the one who was the leader of the team, and I remember looking at him like that. I have so many memories of Len as a broadcaster, doing the Chiefs games from the radio booth. I would go up there, periodically during the preseason and be part of the broadcast with he and Mitch. But something that I also had the pleasure of doing with him for many, many years was the Len Dawson Scholarship, which goes to a deserving high school student to help them with their college tuition. And he and I, for about a decade, presented that award each year. And I know that was something that was really important to him. And it was just a small sample of the way that he gave back to the community of Kansas City. But it was something that I really enjoyed doing with him. I should also mention in that same vein that, of course, he won the NFL Man of the Year award back in, I believe, 1973, before it was renamed after Walter Payton. But anyhow, he was the first Chiefs player, I believe, to win that award. Very deserving, and again, just showed how much he cared about giving back.
Let's go next to Harold Kuntz. Go ahead, Harold.
Clark, my condolences to you and your family and everything that's gone on today. I know it's a tough moment for you. Obviously, he had a great legacy with the organization. Throughout time, how did you see him help the generation, the new Chiefs, get acclimated to the culture of the Chiefs and everything involved, and what you saw from him that he was able to express so greatly what the Chiefs organization meant to him to the future generations?
Yeah, well, because of his unique role in the media, everybody who came to the team as a player or a coach or a general manager ended up doing an interview with Len Dawson. And I think in a lot of those cases, it was very intimidating, right? You're doing an interview with somebody who's a legend, somebody who had accomplished so much on the field, a Pro Football Hall of Famer, but he had this unique ability to make everybody feel comfortable and feel welcome and feel important being part of the Kansas City Chiefs. So he was a great asset to us, even though he wasn't per se directly working for the organization, in that he was an ambassador who helped welcome generations of football players, coaches, and GMs to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Got two more. We'll go next to Darren Smith. Go ahead, Darren.
Hey, Clark, just like everyone else said, my condolences to you, the organization, as well as his family. How would you like him to be remembered by the city of Kansas City? I mean, when you look at it, he was, as you said, Kansas City's first superstar, so to speak. And you look at younger fans of the game today who may not know about Len Dawson and what he meant to the city as well as to the league. He obviously was the first, one of the initial broadcasters for inside the NFL. And so, so his presence just felt all across the league. But how would you like the city of Kansas City to remember Len Dawson?
Well, I think some people are going to remember him as a player. Others will remember him as a broadcaster. But I hope that everybody in Kansas City will remember him as someone who embraced the city and really spent his entire life trying to make Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play.
We'll go last to Vahe again. Go ahead, Vahe.
Clark, just a sort of a two-parter. When you think about Len Dawson, what do you think sums him up in the sense of how he stands for this city? And then just have a quick follow-up, Brad.
As I mentioned earlier, I think he's synonymous with the success of the early Chiefs organization and those early teams that really helped establish the Chiefs in the American Football League. But I think when you step back and think about him in terms of Kansas City, I think he's synonymous with somebody who cared about the community and was really focused on finding ways to give back.
And the second part is, at that time you were too young for this, but those of us who didn't live in the area at the time, he was a bit iconic around the nation at a time where that was, not as easy to have happen as now. I'm curious if you have some sense of, even during his playing days before the broadcasting stuff took off, of how much he seemed to be a national figure then.
Yeah, I probably didn't appreciate it at the time because I was fairly young, but I've certainly come to appreciate it over the last, 20 or 30 years. When I run into somebody who's not from Kansas City, but they're a fan of pro football, they frequently will bring up Len Dawson's name because that's who they remember from those early Chiefs teams. So I do have a sense for his impact. I've had people from around the country reach out to me today and say, hey, I cheered for the Chiefs because of Len Dawson, when I was a little kid, even though I didn't live in Kansas City.
Clark, that's all we have. We really appreciate you taking the time.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. That's all we've got for today. If you guys